Welcome to the fourth Brisbane update for 2025 here on the Brisbane Channel. And brace yourselves, this one is going to be huge. Some of these updates will make you smile, but some may make your blood boil, so please make sure you don't have any sharp objects within reach. I have updates from each of the 5 Greater Brisbane LGAs. Everything from the inevitable Olympics review submission reveals, to transport updates, to development applications, and a heap more. If any of the updates are interesting or helpful to you, please give the video a thumbs up. That tells the YouTube algorithm that the video is bringing value, which helps the Brisbane channel. And of course, you can support the channel by buying me a coffee or becoming a channel member. I'd better get on with it because there's 21 updates to get through. So make yourself comfortable and let's go. I know, some of you are probably overhearing about the 2032 Olympics review submissions, but I promise I'll make them snappy. A number of sporting associations have expressed a desire for facilities that would leave a lasting legacy in the form of centres that could be used after the Olympic and Paralympic Games. In Hockey Australia and Hockey Queensland's joint submission to the 100-day Games Review, they expressed dissatisfaction with the current proposal to hold their events on temporary pitches at Ballymore, a rugby stadium, proposing instead that the hockey events be held at the Gold Coast Hockey Centre at Labrador, where the hockey was held during the 2018 Commonwealth Games. They argue that this would create a permanent legacy for the sport and be more cost-effective and also fulfill the Olympics Committee's new norm of using existing infrastructure. They add that the Gold Coast Council has agreed to pay 50% of the cost of any necessary upgrades. Similarly, aquatic sporting bodies representing swimming, water polo, diving and artistic swimming are also pushing for a permanent legacy venue in Brisbane. They've called for a new aquatic centre to be built at Victoria Park that could become a permanent national base for all 4 sports. This is instead of the current proposal for a temporary pool at the planned Brisbane Arena at Roma Street. A joint submission to the Games Review by Football Queensland and Football Australia have proposed a new stadium at Perry Park which could hold 17,000 spectators and 30,000 in games mode, at an estimated cost of up to $200 million. The proposal has in-principle support from FIFA. The stadium would also enable more high-level football games to be held in Brisbane, as Football Australia has admitted to being unable to hold games in Brisbane, often due to Suncorp Stadium's congested calendar. Beyond Perry Park, the submission also put forward expansion of the Queensland state home of football at Meakin Park in Slacks Creek, with construction of 10 pitches that could be used as a training site both during and before and after the games. But it's not just sporting bodies putting in submissions to the Games Review. Cycling advocacy group Space for Cycling has put in a submission calling for the legacy of the Games to be a more active and healthy lifestyle for Brisbane, with easy and equitable active transport access. The most headline-grabbing part is their call for the Queensland Government to relax its mandatory helmet laws during the Games, saying it creates the impression that Brisbane is uniquely dangerous for cyclists and that the environmental impact of supplying thousands of plastic bicycle helmets should be considered. The caveat is that the low risk of head injuries riding without a helmet is conditional on having quality cycling routes separated from motor vehicle traffic. Bicycle Queensland have stated that they won't call for any change in state regulations, but that they understand Space for Cycling's reasoning. Both groups call for a focus on encouraging people to walk, scoot or ride to venues during the Games, and ensuring that infrastructure is put in place for them to do that safely. A large part of that involves closing the gaps in the active transport network, something that came up a lot when the Brisbane Channel explored that topic in the video linked here. I'll also put a link in the video description. Over in Ipswich, and the state government and Ipswich City Council will be meeting to finalise the design concepts for a 12,000-seat rectangular stadium capable of hosting NRL games, which could also be utilised during the Olympic and Paralympic Games. North Ipswich Reserve will also see upgraded broadcast facilities. It's already been allocated $20 million by the federal government, $10 million from the state government and $10 million by Ipswich City Council. And while we're on the sporting updates, in the last week it was announced that Brisbane will host 10 games in the 2027 Men's Rugby World Cup. With Townsville hosting another 4 games, it's expected the events will generate $212 million for the Queensland economy. As most people living in Brisbane will know, the Brisbane Metro bus line M2 started running on January 28th. But that day also saw implementation of a wide range of changes to Brisbane's bus network. Those changes were already outlined in the December Week 1 update last year on the Brisbane Channel, so I'll put a link to that in the video description. And of course, the changes to the ferry network covered in last week's update were also implemented on the 28th. Some of the bus network changes involve changes to school routes as the new school year started last Monday. That means that 40 km/h zones are once again in effect, so don't get caught out. And while we're talking about schools, 2 new schools have opened their doors to students for the first time. Collingwood Park State Secondary College in Ipswich has 220 foundation students. In Park Ridge, Corymbia State School welcomed 500 foundation students. The school will become one of the largest state primary schools in Queensland, with more than 1,400 students by 2027. Did you know that the winner of Best International Travel Insurance for Value in Finder's 2024 Travel Insurance Awards is a local Brisbane company? Wise and Silent Travel Insurance won the 2024 Value Award because it costs less on average but covers you for more. They're also the official travel insurance provider for Australian passengers on Scoot Airlines and the sponsor of this video. Backed by a global insurance provider and a 24/7 medical assistance team, the rave reviews on Trustpilot confirm that you can travel with total peace of mind if you choose Wise and Silent for your next overseas trip. Click this QR code or the link in the video description to get an exclusive 10% discount on your premium. Now some bad news for anyone needing to travel to or from Brisbane Airport. Last week it was announced that Airtrain fares will more than double next month. When the Miles State Government introduced 50-cent fares, they negotiated a 50% reduction in Airtrain fares for 6 months. Well, that's ending on February 10, and from that day, Airtrain fares will increase from $10.95 to $22.30, which is 40 cents more than before the 50% discount came in. For those that work at the airport, a weekly ticket, which currently costs $21.50, will cost $46. Airtrain have said the price is adjusted to follow increases in the Consumer Price Index, but the 7% increase in weekly ticket prices is almost 3 times the CPI, with the Bureau of Statistics reporting a CPI rise of 2.4% last week. I've put a link in the video description for a great breakdown from another YouTube channel if you want to know more about why there are basically no affordable public transport alternatives to get to and from the Brisbane airport. According to the 2021 census, over 30% of people living in Greater Brisbane were born overseas. And from next Monday, the 3rd of February, nominations open for the 2025 Multicultural Queensland Awards. The awards recognise individuals and organisations that contribute to a prosperous, fair and harmonious multicultural Queensland. You're invited to nominate people that are making differences in multicultural communities. Categories include Outstanding Contribution by a New Queenslander, Diversity and Inclusion Champion, and Lifetime Achiever. I've put a link in the video description to the MQA webpage. Now let's whip around the 5 LGAs to see what's new across Greater Brisbane. Starting in Brisbane City and Dexus, the developer behind Waterfront Brisbane, previously Eagle Street Pier, put in an application to amend their development plans to alter their 2-storey waterfront pavilions, the riverside building that will house restaurants, cafes, bars and retail outlets. The whole $2.5 billion development will eventually feature 2 towers, the first of which is scheduled to be completed in 2028. The Riverwalk is due to reopen early next year with temporary finishes. Now to upgrades of a much smaller scale, and Brisbane City Council is on the home straight of a 3-year accelerated program to install shade at 150 playgrounds across the city. The final 34 playgrounds are scheduled to be completed by June this year. Here's a list of the remaining locations. Brisbane City Council also announced in the last week the 24 community clubs and organisations that will receive funding for upgraded facilities under the Better Suburb grants. The 24 successful clubs applied for grants of up to $200,000 each, with over $2.3 million granted in total. Here's a list of the approved projects. Now to Logan, where the council voted to establish a new 12-month trial with no more than 2 e-scooter hire providers after Beam ceased operations on the 22nd of November. Of course, if you've been following the Brisbane Channel's updates for a while, you'd know the same company was booted out of Brisbane for alleged dodgy practices last year, as Beam have been accused of in other cities internationally. Beam have not commented on why they've stopped their operations in Logan, however. Another Logan update is that the council have updated their flood maps after obtaining approval to do so from the state government. In a nutshell, the changes reflect an easing of restrictions on properties that, while not becoming flooded themselves, become isolated when flooding does occur. Council can now approve developments even if they become isolated in times of flood for up to 36 hours. The risk categories of very low, low, moderate and high will now become just low, moderate and high, with the moderate category contracted, which will move some properties from moderate risk to low risk. Logan City Council will be seeking community consultation on their new planning scheme, which includes a permanent flood policy in late 2025 after the planning scheme has been approved by the state government. Moving now to Ipswich, and community groups have signed a petition opposing developer Stockland's proposed Springview Village development. The project would see 167 hectares of Woogaroo forest cleared. Their calls to halt the project are supported by University of Queensland Professor Hugh Possingham, who argues that the area is of critical importance as one of the last natural habitats to remain intact in Ipswich. This is supported by ecologist Christina Zdenek, who points out that the area is an important habitat for vulnerable species, including grey-headed flying foxes and powerful owls, as well as koalas, which are already endangered. It's also one of the last remaining pockets of southeast Queensland with frilled dragon or frilled neck lizards. There's also said to be other endangered plant and animal species in the forest. And conflict in Ipswich seems to continue inside the City Council chambers, with a motion put forward to make significant changes to their media and corporate communications policy, shifting control over media inquiries and communications from the Mayor to committee chairs. Supporters argue that it will streamline council communications and improve accountability, but Mayor Teresa Harding claims it is part of a broad strategy to undermine her authority and effectively gag her. But let's not dig too deeply into that, but instead jump across to Redland City, where council have announced that 2 possible development scenarios for Capalaba's Jones Road to Old Cleveland Road precinct will be put out for community consultation around late February to early March this year. The first scenario is a relatively modest increase in residential housing and mixed-use spaces, which aims to balance growth with maintaining the character of the area. The second scenario involves more significant growth with higher density housing, including apartments up to 30 metres in height, and a more intensely expanded cluster of mixed-use developments, particularly in the southern part of the precinct. There have been reports of concern with regard to traffic infrastructure's ability to cope with the additional strain either scenario could place on the roads, and the Brisbane Channel will keep you up to date as more specifics emerge. Now up to Moreton Bay LGA, where the Department of Transport and Main Roads has released updated information about the Gateway Motorway and Bruce Highway upgrades. Design of the Bracken Ridge to Pine River section will commence this year, with building work starting in 2026. Upgrades will include lanes added to the Gateway Motorway and improved connections between Bracken Ridge Road and the Deegan Deviation, as well as a new Wyampa Road bridge, noise barriers and fauna fencing and underpasses. This year will also see the start of design work on Stage 2, which will include 2 new Pine River bridges. The whole $2 billion project from Bracken Ridge to North Lakes is to handle a predicted traffic increase of 50% over the next 20 years. You may have seen that music festival organisers have been struggling in recent years. Last week, the state government announced a new round of grants for not-for-profit arts and cultural festivals valued at no less than $100,000 a year over a period of 4 years. Arts Queensland's Organisations Fund 2026 to 2029 aims to support not-for-profit festivals that provide live music in their program. Applications are now open and close on the 10th of March. Don't forget to send a coffee or two my way to say thanks for putting these updates together, or become a member of the channel to get access to extra exclusive content and other perks. Special thanks to Wise and Silent Travel Insurance for sponsoring this video, and also thanks to all channel members for your support. Elite contributors Darby Royal, Chad Martin and OneUp, Insiders Mostly Reading, Adventure Day Trips Brisbane, Queensland Country Bank, Freja Australis and Josephine Gibson, and these supporters. If you're still watching, congratulations for making it to the end. I wasn't even sure if I'd make it this far. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. All right, got there.